Okay, this is like the worst setup ever, but I just had this on my mind, so I had to stop what I was doing. I just wanted to share this story. I spent the other day shooting probably the most challenging scene of my film. I was down by the ocean. I was in Seagirt, New Jersey. The ocean was angry that day, and it wasn't perfect because it wasn't the kind of day that I really expected, and I guess because winter never actually came to this area this year, I've been putting it off, and I knew that I had to get down there on that day, the other day, because you know the weather's changing so fast, and actually today it was 75 degrees in this area. So I'm glad I got down there that day. So I want to talk to you about a few things. First of all, this video is going to be like kind of all over the place, so bear with me. The first thing I want to talk about is when you're working on a film, a feature film, maybe not a short film, but a feature that's really a long form of art, you got to be prepared for a lot of unpredictable stuff. Like there's a lot of things that are not going to happen the way you planned them or the way you expected them, and you have to like stay true to the story, but you have to stay flexible to telling that story. Like you have to really, you know, be open and willing to make changes, to make adjustments, to just figure it out. Like, you know, there are many, many ways to tell a story, and all of them are equally as good, you know. And you might think you had the greatest idea in the world, and you know, in my case, winter was like a really integral part of the story, and it just never happened. It just didn't happen. And I also involved other people in this film, and they just, you know, like they weren't as flexible as I needed, but they could, you know, who could be that flexible? Like I was calling people going, can you do it today? Can you go next Wednesday? Like it was just hard to pin people down, and I kept finding myself trying to make adjustments, and I got to a point where I felt like I was, you know, compromising the actual story just to get everybody in, you know? And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, like the most important thing is the story. That's it, you know? And you know, it's the only thing that doesn't change. You know, it's the only part of this process and this journey and this project and any project that should never change, you know? The story can evolve, but if you don't have a concrete story, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like you should, you know, if you don't have a really good idea of what you're doing, if you don't have a starting point and an ending point and, you know, most of the middle, it's going to take forever. You're never going to finish. It's going to constantly change. Like you have to know what you're trying to say. And so I very concretely know what I'm trying to say in this story. And I'm also very aware that there are many, many ways for me to get from point A to point Z. And so I have had a lot of obstacles to overcome. And I have stepped over every one of them, and I'll continue to do that. You know, nothing's going to stop me from telling the story. It's just not going to be what I initially thought it was going to be. And in fact, it might be better, you know? It might be more interesting, it might be more dynamic, it might be just, it's going to be what it is, you know? Like every story is what it is, you know? It would have been something else, or it might have been something else or something else, but it is what it is. That sounds crazy, but I think you know what I mean. So, first of all, what's amazing is that I shot in very, very challenging circumstances for my camera, and I was a little nervous because even though the Panasonic S5 is weather resistant, I don't think it's really weather sealed. And certainly the Sigma 28-70 f2.8 lens is, I think, the same thing, like weather resistant, but it's not weather sealed. And certainly the ocean and the beach and sand and wind and water and salt water, that is very challenging. You know, all of that stuff can be very, very challenging for this equipment. So I was a little bit nervous, you know, but I took every precaution. And I also, you know, like I beat the crap out of my equipment. Like I always do that, you know. That's why I was really reticent when I was looking for a new camera. I was looking at an FX3 or an A7S III, but I was really nervous about spending $4,000 or $5,000 on new gear because I beat the crap out of my gear, you know. So I did like heavy investigating, and I wound up with the S5 because I knew that I could get an image quality that was equal to the FX3 or the A7S3. And let's face it, I could have gotten a Canon M50 or I could have just used my Sony A6400 and gotten an incredible image. But, you know, I knew that I needed stabilization. That was a big deal for me. I needed better stabilization, and the S5 is all of that. And I needed definitely better dynamic range and better low light capability. And the S5, you know, being a full frame camera, gave me that as well. And the dual native ISO, you know, it just offered me a lot of what I needed at a reasonable price. So sold all my Sony stuff and got the S5 and didn't get hurt so bad, you know. And I'm incredibly happy with it, you know, like I'm in love with it, you know. And also you have to know what's important to you and what's not important to you. Like autofocus was not important to me, even though the autofocus on this camera is pretty good. And the way I use it, it's excellent, you know. Like I use it to lock down shots, but I stay in manual focus all the time. So I'm not looking for, you know, continual autofocus that's following subjects around and stuff like that. I mean, it would be awesome to have, but that's not the style that I shoot in. It's not what I'm looking for. And maybe down the road I'll get an S5 Mark II and I'll have better autofocus. But, you know, for me, I enjoy manual focus. I mean, I know that might sound crazy, but I actually enjoy doing that. I enjoy being that much a part of the process, you know, like really being hands-on. You know, I like that, you know. I guess maybe I'm just used to it, you know, but I enjoy that. So, you know, that was not even an issue for me. And everything else about the S5 is great for me. And you know what? Vlog is so easy to work with compared to S-Log2, which I was used to working with. And so it took me a couple of months to get used to the image that I was getting because it was way different than the Sony that I was using. But I got used to it. I got used to Vlog. I got into DaVinci Resolve and I really, you know, learned how to work with it. And now I'm getting exactly what I want. So all good things. And so I just say this to say, I'm only going to show you some captures of what I did the other day because I don't want to show any of the video because it's a new film. I don't want to ruin it for anybody. I don't want to put it out there. But I will show some, you know, captures of screenshots from the other day, and I'll just plant them, you know, along the way in this video. But what I really wanted to talk about as well was, you know, the whole thing about how, oh, hold on one sec. Somebody's trying to call me, but I am going to decline, and sorry that I had that on. That's like having a cell phone on at a show. Like if I'm doing a play, that's going to piss me off. But anyway, I'll get back to her. That was actually a good friend of mine. So what was I talking about? Oh, okay. So what I wanted to talk about, you know, what I wanted to include in this video is how people always say the best camera is the one that you have with you, right? So sometimes that's like, you know, whatever. That's just, you know, obviously if you don't have anything else and you have what you have, that's the best camera at the moment. But, you know, here's the thing. I shot my first movie and I feel like my energy is kind of frenetic right now. But like I said, I was thinking about this and I said, just set it up and just shoot it. Otherwise, you're never going to do it because I'm so busy with shooting this film. I'm not doing as much YouTube videos and I want to keep this going. You know what I mean? So excuse my energy. It's kind of high right now. But the best camera is the one you have with you. So I shot my first film on an LG V40 smartphone. Now, LG doesn't even make phones anymore, but in my opinion, those phones, the LG V20, the V30, the V40, the V50, the V60, they have the best video cameras of any phones, in my opinion, better than iPhones. Because the thing is, not only is the image quality amazing, not only can you shoot 4K 60, not only can you shoot 1080 like 240 frames per second, not only can you shoot in log or RAW in some of their phones, you could shoot HDR. I mean, you know, it's H.265, H.264, depending on which V30 or V40 or which V-series phone you're using. The quality that you could get out of those phones is incredible, and they have all the manual controls. You can control your ISO and your white balance and your exposure and everything in the phone. Like, you don't need a software like Filmic Pro to do that with your phone. Like, the LG phones have all of that. So that's why I chose that phone for my film, and it did a great job. It did an amazing job. I think where it kind of fell short maybe was in low light capability, but you know, the ISO capability is not awesome and obviously not as good as any camera, but it's pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. So watch my movie and you'll see what I mean. The center of distance, check it out. I put it on YouTube recently. You can see it for free. I don't know how long it's going to be there, but I got that out of the way. So why am I talking about this? Well, there was one scene in my movie that I'm shooting now that I needed to submerge the camera in the Atlantic Ocean. Like I was going in the Atlantic Ocean and I needed a camera to get my perspective, you know? And obviously I was not even thinking, well, maybe I was thinking of originally keeping my Sony a6400 and doing it with that camera and finding a case. I actually found a case that cost about 250 bucks and it was for underwater shooting. But I was like, do I really want to spend 250 bucks to use it once? And I was kind of like, yeah, I do. So I thought about it, but then I got the S5 and I was investigating ways to do it with the S5. But then I remembered that the LG V40 that I shot my other movie with is waterproof up until 30 feet submerged, like completely waterproof. And so I tested it, and actually, crazy, I tested it in the Hudson River. So I just put a weight on it, you know, a rock, I tied it up, and I just lowered it into the river, and I lowered it about 35 feet. You know, I measured a piece of twine, I tied it up, and I just lowered it about 35 feet. It was fine, like no problem. It recorded really well, and not an issue at all. So I was like, that's what I'm going to use for this scene, because the image quality is amazing as well. And the sound quality, that's the other thing. These LG phones, they record audio 24-bit, 192 kilohertz. Like that is pro audio, you know? That's as good as my Zoom H1N. It's actually better than the Zoom H1N. So these LG phones are amazing. So anyway, I got to that scene. I got down to the beach the other day. And I shot everything first, and then I got myself to that scene. And like I said, the ocean was kind of angry, and you know, actually I was looking out and I was thinking like, damn, this is actually a little bit more dangerous than I thought it would be. Like it's a little crazy, but thank God I had my friend Steve Peckman there watching me. Honestly, I kind of had him there because a lot of people who knew what I was going to do were encouraging me to have somebody there just in case something went crazy, you know. So anyway, I'm not going to go into exactly what I did because I want to wait till the film comes out and I don't want to ruin anything. But suffice to say, I submerged the LG V40 in the ocean and I held it underwater for about 45 seconds. And it worked like a charm. And the cool thing about it, using my phone, is that I was able to hook it up to Wi-Fi. And actually what I did is I set up a hotspot to my iPhone. And so my LG was now hooked up to Wi-Fi, and I was able to upload the file immediately to Google Drive, and so I had it. And now, you know, I got home, it's in my computer, I got it backed up, like I was able to upload it immediately and back it up. So that was a big advantage. However, I was going to make this video yesterday, and I was prepared to say that, you know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get what you need to get for your film. And the LG V40 survived, but it didn't survive 100% because even though it's waterproof, it's not salt waterproof. And the only thing that really happened to it that was bad was that it lost its sound. Like it could still record sound, but it couldn't play anything. And it was acting weird, and the touchscreen was acting weird, and so I was prepared to come on here and say, my trusty LG V40, I'm going to keep it forever just as a keepsake and keep it next to my father's camera that I have up on a mantle here in my apartment. And you know, I was kind of giving like a rest in peace video about the LG V40 and how amazing it's been for me and how it shot a feature film. You know, I completely used only the LG V40 for the center of distance. And now for this film, I used it on, you know, for this scene because the LG V40 was absolutely the best camera available for that moment. Like there was no other camera that I could have used that was really better for that moment because I was going to put any other camera in complete danger. And that's not good because then I can't shoot the rest of my film. And so that was the best camera available. And lo and behold, I waited a day and the sound came back. So the LG V40 completely survived. It is salt waterproof as well, at least mine is. And so, yeah, you know, it's a smartphone. A lot of people think it's not even as good as shooting with an iPhone. You know, I disagree with that, but okay, you know, some people think a Pixel is better, you know, or you know, Huawei, you know, So, you know, like people have their opinions about their smartphones and the video and all that kind of stuff. The LG V40 has no stabilization, so that is a disadvantage. However, using that phone as my main camera for a long time, and then going to the Sony a6400, which also has no stabilization, I really learned how to use my body to stabilize, because even though I have a Weebill S, I have a great gimbal, I hate using it. Like, I hate breaking it out. It's a waste of my time. I hate setting it up. It's just a pain in the ass. And so I use it when I absolutely 100% need an uber steady shot. But with the Lumix S5, I don't really need it, because I learned how to stabilize shots first with my phone, which had no stabilization and is so light that any movement at all gave you that shaky kind of look. And the Sony a6400, the same thing, no stabilization, incredibly small, incredibly light, but I actually learned how to get really stable shots. Stabilize myself up against a tree or the side of a building or whatever, you know, just use my body kind of zen, you know, and like let it float, you know, don't hold it so tight, just let it float with your body. You know, I got that look. Excuse me. And so that was kind of like school. For now, I have a Lumix S5, which has the greatest stabilization, and combined with the fact that I kind of learned how to do that anyway, I have great stabilization. I hardly ever have to use my gimbal. So, again, I'm all over the place. I apologize for that. The LG V40 was the right camera for that moment. It was the only camera for the moment that I was shooting that scene at the Atlantic Ocean in Seagirt, New Jersey, and it nailed the shot. And the sound is remarkable. Like, it's perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. And I couldn't have gotten that with the S5. The S5 was the perfect camera for everything else that I did. And oh my God, it looks so beautiful. The dynamic range, the image quality that I got, the fact that I can just run around and, you know, I have shutter angle so I don't have to be worried about my settings all the time. You know, I can really play with my aperture and be as creative as I want to be. You know, it's just, you know, I've been so happy with this S5. The low light capability, the fact that I went full frame has really, really helped me, you know? And so, yeah. That's what I wanted to share, that, you know, the LG V40, I was going to give it like a funeral video, but it survived, so I'll be able to still use it in the future. I have the LG V60 as well. I have the LG V30. I have the LG V20. I have all of them. Oh, and one more thing, and this is kind of an aside, but when I buy phones, I never buy a flagship phone when it comes out, because I ain't spending $1,000 on a phone or $1,400 or something like that. I'm not trying to have $50 a month payments for my phone. I wait about 6 to 8 months, maybe a year, and then I buy that phone, and it costs, in my case, I got the LG V40. When it came out, it was $950, I believe. I got it for $260 a year later. I got the LG V60 recently, and I'm using it as my main phone, actually, because it's still getting Android updates, because LG is still supporting that phone. I got it for $200. That was a $1,200 phone when it came out. It's a great phone. It's amazing. And so that's how I do that, you know. So I have these great filmmaking tools for like no money, you know. $200. You can get an LG V30 now for like $100 on eBay. And you know what? Just make sure you do your due diligence. Get a seller who's reliable, who's got 1 million reviews, and you know, you can tell when they're real or when they're bullshit. Like, just be smart. And I've never had a bad experience on eBay, ever. So, you know, there are opportunities out there. You can get a lot of great filmmaking tools. In my case, it's these LG phones. I use them for sound quite often. And in this case, I used it for my feature film, which I'm shooting on a full-frame camera. So, yeah, the best camera is the one you have in your hands, and it's the one that's best for the job in that moment. And I'm going to stop now because I can feel my energy is still kind of off the charts, and this might sound all crazy and all over the place, but thank you for watching, and onward we go. And yeah, see you next time. I'm going to be shooting another difficult scene this weekend for my film. I should be finished shooting probably sometime in the summer, and then editing, and you know, hopefully it'll be out by like next spring or something like that. So yeah, peace, later, bye.